there be a lot of changes at VMware and Intel. Two of my sponsors of the channel, we've done sponsored content by both Intel and VMware. Intel sponsors the CTO Advisor Hybrid Infrastructure, and VMware recently sponsored some content around software-defined networking and SaaS disclosure. But you know what? Pat Gelsinger leaving VMware is one thing that we kind of expected to happen. During a DM conversation with one of my analyst peers, the question came up, well, how long did we expect Pat to be at VMware? And my answer was until Bob Swan left Intel. Pat Gelsinger, long-term Intel alum, first CTO at Intel. There's always been this general idea in the industry that when the time was right, Pat would leave VMware for Intel, given the opportunity, the time is right. However, how does this impact both companies? Pat will continue to be on the board of directors of Intel, seeing that Intel and VMware are very, very close partners, and there's not much reason for VMware to lose the complete talent of Pat Gelsinger. Well, let's talk about VMware first. Pat is pretty much the heart and soul of VMware. If you talk to their employees, my limited time working there for 6 months, it was very evident that not only was VMware's corporate values, which they label Epic 2, is in alignment with Pat's personal values. The big part of recruitment that VMware used was this personality of cult. We don't talk about it a lot in enterprise technology, that many enterprise IT companies are driven by, or not many, are driven by personality of cult. Oracle is one with Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison's personality just permeates throughout Oracle. This is the case with VMware. Pat Gelsinger's personality of generosity, fierce competitors, see competition with Nutanix, permeates throughout VMware. So VMware will be losing a big part of their cultural identity with Pat Gelsinger. I talked to some VMware employees. They feel that VMware as a culture will survive that. That's to be seen. More importantly, from a customer and potentially investor perspective, recruitment of talent is a big deal. I tweeted back on the 5th that VMware had been leaking talent. They had lost their head of sales for their HCI solutions to Pure Storage. They lost their head of cloud to Nutanix. Most recently, they lost yet another cloud-related talent in a time period that VMware cannot afford to lose cloud talent, as they look to make the argument that VMware Tanzu and VMware vSphere and HCI are the way of the future for the hybrid infrastructure. Let's switch over to Intel. Intel is in some trouble. As the sponsor of the CTO Advisor Hybrid Infrastructure, I have no problem saying that. Intel has a very, very solid strategy around making sure that processors isn't the only part of their story. You can look at the CTO Advisor Hybrid Infrastructure page and see how Intel is talking about network storage, networking and storage as part of their I/O stack, and then processors as part of the processor stack, and then bringing in management, telemetry data, security as part of their kind of 5-tier stack around the data center of the future. Very solid enterprise IT story. Execution is a problem. Pure speeds and fees and cost of processing, ARM, NVIDIA, AMD are attacking these pillars of Intel's relationships. One of the more complicated ones has been Amazon. Amazon doesn't give numbers, but I'm sure that the majority of workloads that run within Amazon's cloud are based on Intel processors. So Amazon being Amazon is going to put pressure on Intel to reduce the cost that Intel receives from Amazon to run workloads. You're seeing a lot more AMD being promoted inside of AWS as well as ARM on their Graviton platform. But you know what? It's pretty hard to scale that stuff and get customers to trust non-Intel workloads. But Amazon has enough incentive. How does this relate to Pat and what Pat can do? Because it takes a long time to fix the processor issues. Well, let's look at what he did at VMware. We all said back 5-6 years ago that VMware was basically dead because Amazon was going to cannibalize their virtualization market share just by giving away EC2's management plane as part of consuming Amazon's cloud virtual machines. That didn't happen. For two reasons. Customers are extremely resistant to change. Enterprise IT customers change slowly. That is to the benefit of Intel. But VMware was extremely astute, Pat specifically, in partnering with Amazon in a way that we did not predict. Both AWS and VMware are extremely bullish on VMware Cloud on AWS. VMware Cloud on AWS is the only other cloud Andy Jassy has ever spoken of on stage at AWS reInvent. Can Pat recreate some of that magic within Intel? Can he work the biz dev with Apple, Amazon, enterprise IT vendors who are looking at ARM as an alternative or migration path away from x86? Can he partner in that way? Will he look at x86 as kind of this holy grail that can't be disturbed? At VMware, again, he partnered with Amazon. Recently, maybe a year and a half ago, Intel acquired our ARM license. I don't know. I'm not making predictions. I'm just saying that bringing in this new blood that understands competition, understands the overall market, and can come up with creative business solutions as the technology eventually catches up to the peers. Intel will be fine from a manufacturing perspective. At some point, they'll figure out the 7 nanometer process. But can Pat help to kind of save the business until then? You know, it'll be exciting to see. I love your feedback. What do you think are the most interesting attributes of the transition of Pat Gelsinger from VMware to Intel? How does that impact VMware? Where are the holes? And Intel, how does Pat's impact on Intel realistically impact the market, you as an enterprise IT customer? I'd love to hear your feedback at CTO Advisor on Twitter, or you can join the conversation on LinkedIn. Talk to you next CTO Dose.